My original assignment was to cover the oil spill in very classical, normal reportage style, which I actually did. I went down to New Orleans 2 days after the actual explosion of the rig, and went out with the Coast Guard and with cleaning crews and did the story on the communities affected in very normal, classical photojournalistic style. This was an incredibly hard story to tell visually. It was very hard to articulate visually because it wasn't like the Exxon Valdez. When I was growing up, I remember seeing pictures of that. That was an oil spill that was literally right off the shore. This was 50 miles off the coast. And already, it took 3 weeks for the oil to actually go from the spill itself to hit land. And, but already when the oil spill happened, the people living in those coastal communities were like, okay, we're shutting down. We can no longer fish. All the, charter boat fishermen were ready. Everything was canceled for the season. They were going bankrupt, and they were bemoaning that, the state of their economy and that they were going to lose everything. You could tell that story with words, but you couldn't actually show it because the oil hadn't gotten there yet. So the whole time I was there, I was thinking, what can I do to tell this story? Especially in today's world where everyone sees pictures all the time. Like, these images appear on the wire or on Yahoo News or, whatever website you go to for 5 minutes, and then they're refreshed, and then there's something else. And there's so many pictures that there's no way to connect with people. And then specifically you had this story where it was really hard to have a picture that told the story. So I was kind of searching for a way to do that. And that's sort of, in my career, I've done that a lot. In Iraq or in Afghanistan or in a lot of places I go, I try and find or try and make a new visual trope to have a narrative that can bypass that can kind of overcome people's apathy or people's inability to get the whole story, because there's so much information out there. And I was trying to find a way to do that. And I actually went home from the assignment, and I was on vacation over Memorial Day weekend in the States, and I was thinking about what I can do, and I really came upon this idea of abstracting the images and making something really beautiful out of something horrible. And I think that's a real strength of photography, almost from the beginning, when I think it was Irving Penn who photographed peppers, like rotten peppers in black and white, and you can make something so mundane look beautiful. And that's a real strength that photography can do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and literally take these pictures of the oil just sitting on the water, because it actually looked beautiful. The oil was oxidizing and changing color, and light was reflecting through it, and prismatic. And I thought, if I can make these images that are beautiful and that are ambiguous at the same time, and all of a sudden people, the viewer, the audience, will look at them and they'll take a step closer, because they'll ask that question, what am I looking at? And all of a sudden, I'm looking at the oil spill. That content is delivered, the horror and the beauty at the same time. And then maybe I'm getting my point across, and maybe I'm communicating. And, you're getting a point, and you're talking to people who would otherwise just pass by those images, who wouldn't look at them. And I think that's very important. As photographers, as photojournalists, we're not just journalists. We're also photographers. We're also artists. And we need to remember that we need to kind of create something that has a twofold purpose. It's aesthetic and it's storytelling. One of the things I always remember that my photo professor said is that really successful art asks questions. It doesn't necessarily answer them. But that asking questions involves the audience. And typically, journalism is not supposed to ask questions. It's supposed to say what's going on. The viewership for art is very different than the viewership for journalism. You're not going to hang the New York Times on a wall and expect people to stare at it and pay money to go in and see it. But when you go to the Tate Modern or the MoMA, people line up to see work hanging on a wall, and they contemplate it and they look at it. And if there's a way to straddle the line between that viewership of contemplating work, of looking at it, and it being contextual and having meaning behind it, that is important to our daily life, important to understanding the world around us. That should be our ultimate goal.